follow this in because this indicates that we're doing VR right. While I'm talking about myself, which could last a while, I'm going to let you guys take a look at this link here. If you don't have the assets on your computer for the project that we're going to be working on, I'll put this in and download them. I think they were downloaded on several computers. You're looking for like a Viking Quest VR start folder. Oh, there. Did you get them on all the computers?
Not all of them, but in a number of them, it's on the desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, I also have it in a flash drive. I can also move those around.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys are going to be working along, following along with me today. And I just want to make sure you have the project that we can get started. I think Unity was also on all the computers. You should. Some version of Unity 5.4. So yeah, while you're downloading that, I'm Jesse Smith. I'm a field engineer with Unity. I've been with Unity for about 2 years. My job is kind of to usually to go on site with customers and talk to them about issues they're having, questions they have. I also go to some conferences and talk on behalf of Unity and do presentations like this to cool people that are interested in using Unity. So this is kind of like my favorite part. Yeah, my email, jesse@unity3d.com. That'd be the preferred way to contact me. So at the end of the workshop today, if you have questions about stuff we worked on or why isn't this working, feel free to contact me. I'm also on Twitter, so if you tweet at me, I'll probably respond eventually. I don't use that as much as my email, but definitely on there. Has everyone started downloading the project, or does everyone have it? Raise your hand if you don't. Make sure that. Okay. Looks like everyone's got it. So what we're doing today is we're going to create a project in Unity using assets from the asset store. And these are actually some of those assets. You don't need to worry about going to this link or anything, but this is in the asset store. These are all in the project that you've downloaded that you have on your computers. One thing we have is this environment that we're using called 3D Fancy. It's kind of got these trees and rocks, it's like floating island. We're also going to be using Mini Viking Eric from, I guess, BitGem is the company that put this in our asset store. So one thing to know about Unity is that you can create content and sell it in the asset store and maybe make some money off of it, or give it away for free, whatever you choose to do. So we're using some paid assets in our project today. This is supposed to be a video, but it won't run in there, so we're going to run it in here. This is an example of, this is kind of the project that we're working on. This one uses Unity Ads, but since we're doing the VR version, Ads is only on mobile, so Android and iOS. Our ads platform won't run in VR, but the game, the base game is the same here.
Did you put your?
That was a great game, by the way. I played that for like 2 years, and then I updated my phone, and I couldn't keep playing.
Make more combos, kick more butt.
Cool. So that's kind of the end project we're going to have. We're going to have these UI elements. We're going to have a character with some animations. And what you don't see here is the VR portion of it that we're going to have also. So let's get back to the presentation. Good. So the goals today are to create a game using content from the asset store, to construct a game with integrated VR, to demonstrate how to use various tools in the Unity editor to create games, and to identify a few good design practices when you're building games for VR. So the way we're going to do this workshop is what we call learning cycles, and basically what's going to happen is I'm going to show you how to do one step and explain it and talk about things in Unity, and then I'm going to put those steps up on a slide, and then you'll do it on your own computers. So I'll just ask that while I'm explaining it, just watch what I'm doing, that way you get to see it once, and then I'll put the slides up, you get to read what to do, and then you get to do it yourself. Because if you start trying to do it while I'm talking, you're going to miss things that I say, you're going to get sidetracked, because that happens to me all the time. So yeah, definitely follow along, but wait your turn. So the cycles that we're going to go through today, we're going to start off taking a look at the project, opening it, seeing what's in there. We're going to build a simple scene. We're going to add the Viking to our scene. We're going to add some world boundaries so he doesn't fall off the edge. Integrate VR, which you'll see is going to be like the simplest thing that we do in this project. We're going to animate our Viking. We're going to create animation transitions so that we can go from like running to jumping, etc. We're going to add collectibles into our game. I'll show you how to spawn those collectibles. Create a game manager so we kind of have game logic and a win state for our game, a win and loss state. We're going to add some audio. We're going to do some things to kind of improve the graphics and look and feel of the game. And then I'll show you how you build and deploy games in Unity. This is a lot to get through. This workshop was designed for kind of like a half day or full day, so we probably won't get through it all. But I'll make sure you guys have a link to the slides to download them, and then you can finish on your own as well. And you can get the project and everything that you need to kind of go through it yourself. All right, so we're going to start off with step one here. So this is where I'm going to start talking and show you guys just how this works, and then I'll let you do it yourself. I always bring up my notes on my phone after I can do that every time. So when you open Unity, you're going to first see this screen where you can, these are all the projects you've opened before, and as you can see, I've been working on a lot of bugs in Unity. So you'll hit open, you'll go to wherever you have Viking Quest VR start, click open. Again, don't do this just yet. I'll put the slides up and you can do this shortly. So right now Unity it's importing the models, the textures, the animations from all the assets that are in the game right now. Depending on the size of your project, this could take a while, but we are working on a system that will do this lickety-split. Our CTO, he's talked about it, and his goal is to open like a gigabyte project in under 10 seconds. It looks pretty promising. This didn't take this long last time I opened it. Yeah. And in between when I put the slides up for you to do your steps, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I see a hand back there right now. So.
Does it matter what version we have of Unity?
It should work with 5.3, any version of 5.3. I've only used it with 5.4.
Okay.
So I think 5.4 was put on all the computers.
Oh, because I'm using my laptop, so I'm not sure if I should download 5.4. Should I just?
Do you have 5.3?
Yeah.
That'll probably work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In 5.4 we started, 5.3 we started to integrate the VR things natively, and 5.4 we solidified that. So I'm just not sure how it's going to work with the VR side of things in 5.3, but everything else should be the same.
Okay, I'll just download 5.4 then.
If you can do that, if you have a fast enough internet to do that, then definitely. All right. All right. So the first thing when you open up Unity, you see this blank scene with kind of this gray landmass thing-ish and some blue-gray sky. So we're going to start working with that for a while. We'll update that later on to make that look better. But the first thing we want to do here, just to show you how to do some things in Unity, I'm going to look for my ground prefab. So I'm looking at prefabs here, and I have, it's in a model there. It's an environment. Prefabs, environment, ground, throw that in my scene. So now I have this floating island in my scene. And what I just want to show you is like quick navigation around the scene, the things you can do. So if you use the right mouse button, you can look around the scene. That's just kind of like a first person look. If I hold the right mouse button down and I hit A or D, I can pan left and right. If I hit Q and E, I go down and up. And if I hit W and S, I zoom in and out. These are actually controls that I just learned about recently because I've always used different ways to do it because there's other things you can do that I'll show you also. Also, if you have a scroll button or if you have the Apple Magic Mouse, you can zoom in using that. Another cool feature is the F key. So if I'm looking away from something, but I know I want to like focus it in my scene view, if I highlight it in my hierarchy window over here, again, actually, the hierarchy window is everything that's in your current scene, and the scene window visualizes all of that. So if I highlight that and hit F, it focuses that object in my scene view, and I can kind of use those controls that I just mentioned to move around and take a look at it. And then the next thing I want us to do is just to save this scene. So I can hit Command S on Mac or Control S on Windows, or go up to the File menu, Save Scene. This folder structure isn't required, but it's kind of one of the standard ones that we use at Unity and a lot of people use when they're making games. So we'll have a scenes directory where we keep all of our scenes. I'll just name this like Viking Quest VR. I'll show you in my project window over here. You see that scenes directory again, and you see my Viking Quest VR scene. What's nice about Unity is that I can say reveal in Finder. My project folder is just a reflection of what's in my file system. So Unity uses the file system of Windows and Mac to just organize your project. You'll notice there are a bunch of meta files in here. Those are important for Unity to reference all the different assets in the project. So don't be scared by those, they're just information that Unity uses. And if you're using source control, definitely check those in, because they're important. So that's step one. So I'm gonna turn this over to you all to do those things that I just did. So open the project, let those assets import, drag the ground prefab, and that's in prefab's environment in that folder. Drag that into the scene. You can save the scene in the scene folder if you want to, and then practice looking around the scene, moving around, right mouse button, WASD. And then while you're doing that, any questions, raise your hand, I'll come back. So if you go to Viking Quest VR Start, you can actually just hit select over here because Unity is looking at the folder that you're in. Yeah, it's not like other file, other applications where you have an extension on the file, you double click it, it opens the new. Yeah, no problem. Work my way up to the aisle here.
I know we're having it around 4 hey.
Back on one. This is actually
that's a stone texture.
I think I glanced over something that because I've been using Unity for so long, it's normal to me. So when you say open project, you're going to go to the directory. The directory that I have the project in is Viking Quest VR Start. Unity just looks at that directory and looks for assets and project settings to know that that's a Unity project. So you can either just highlight this directory and click open, or if you're inside the directory, click open. So there's not like a file with an extension that you have to double click on. You say open project, and then you open that directory from Unity.
Yeah, that's my question.
Okay.
Like, it looks.
There's like a million of them.
It looks like, oh, well, you're in model, so you don't even know prefab. What prefab is that there's like functionality that's already been included into it. It's kind of like a problem. Whereas model is just like a no, you're right. You're prefab. What's your ground, I guess. I mean, I don't see a ground model, bro. I don't see ground here and all that.
Oh, this is my ground.
Yeah, give me a sec. Yeah, I guess this is it. I mean, it looks.
That's how you're gonna end up more use.
Yeah, is it ground? Which ground do you want us to?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, this is just kind of showing you. We have a scene set up that we'll get into it.
Is this all texture? Is all this texture just like it's just like flat geometry and then like for the most part and then just see all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no bump maps on it or anything, so it looks very flat. It's very simple.
I'm not sure if I opened it correctly. I got this. Oh yeah, bump maps. Let's see it. What I did was I dragged this into.
Saying that one of the folders isn't supposed to be
Scene.
Yeah, so that's not the recommended way to open this. So just go to the file, open project, and then navigate to wherever that folder was.
Files.
Yeah.
That's Adobe. That's Adobe. Oh yeah, I forgot they have this. That's sweet. I've never actually played around with this. I am going to.
So is everybody pretty good with that step? Ready to move on? All right.
Hey.
So now we're going to do a little more scene building here with our current, I think, everybody hand over here. So if we go into our prefabs environment directory again, that's where we got the ground from. There are a lot of other objects in here too. So let's start dragging some of those. We'll start dragging some of those in. Again, I'll do this now and let you guys do it shortly. Maybe I get another piece of ground in there. I don't know what that means. So we can put a tree in here too. Alright, so when I drag this second piece of ground in here, I see that it's overlapping with my first one. And I want to use Unity's tools to kind of move that around the scene, so I'm going to show you some of those. Up in the top left corner here, you see these 5 icons. This one is a hand, these arrows, these other arrows, yet more arrows, and like a box with some dots in it. So these are all different tools that you can use to move around your scene and move objects around. I'll start off with the hand tool. This is simply a pan tool, so when you click that, you can use the left mouse button and just pan around your scene. It's a little bit easier to use for me than right-clicking and pressing WASD, but I can move quicker and kind of however I want to. These are also tied to QWERTY on your keyboard. So if I hit Q, that selects the pan tool. Next is W. This is the translate tool. And this is what I can use to move the objects around in the scene. Let me full screen there. So you can see there's this little gizmo in the middle with arrows along 3 axes. Those represent X, Y, and Z. If I click on one arrow, I can move that piece of land out just along the, that's the Z axis. If I use the green one, that's moving up and down in the y-axis. And then if I, it's kind of hard to see, but there's this little square in the very middle. That's so you can move it along 2 axes at one time. So you can move it along just at the x and y plane, however I want to, so you can move those objects around. Next is the rotation tool. If I want to rotate this guy, I can move it up and down. I'm actually going to show you a more realistic use for that. So I have a bridge in here somewhere, wooden bridge. I can move it here. Now I want to move that bridge to gap these 2 pieces of land. So I can use the translate tool that I showed you to kind of move it where I want to. And now I can use the rotate tool. I can hit E or I can check it or click it up here to then rotate it as I want to bridge the gap between those pieces of land. Now the rotate tool has, again, a gizmo that allows you to rotate along single axes. So I can just rotate around Y, or if I click somewhere just generally in there, I can just do like a crazy rotation, which isn't usually that helpful, but you can do it. You can also update things in the inspector window over here. So I have this rotation value. If I click on the Y there, I can drag it left and right, or I can just put a value in there, 180. And I can do it like with actual numbers that I know and expect, and can build this level out a little bit better. Next, we have a scale tool. It again has control points along the axes, and that's so I can scale it in different directions. So I can scale it way out an X and make a really wide bridge. I can make it really tall. And then there's the box in the very center. If I do that, then I scale it uniformly, up and down. And then we have this last tool over here. This is the rect tool. Generally, this is used for 2D objects, so UI and sprites, 2D sprites in your game. But it happens to also work on 3D objects, which probably is not as useful. So I can scale it in like 2 directions and toy with it with the rect tool. So those are some of the basic tools that you have in Unity. So I'm going to turn this back over to you guys again. Allow you guys to place some objects in your scene. They'll be in that prefabs environment folder, and then start using those tools to kind of move around your scene, move objects around, build a simple little scene.
If you guys have questions, you can ask me too.
From the wireframe. My like the one.
Yeah, so basically
And sometimes, yeah, you probably someone before you had that, and they selected it and closed it. And sometimes it saves that.
I think the controls might have changed in versions, but like, normally I thought it was like shift, rotate the keyboard, 90. Is that not the case anymore?
I thought, oh yeah, is it changing the control?
The control, it's like, I guess it's control now. Okay. It used to be shift, I think.
Okay.
This one also was like, I thought this V was to snap, but now it's different.
There might be settings that you have to turn on. Like I think snap is a setting that you turn on in Unity. So you go to like edit preferences.
I didn't know that was like all this time I've tried it like basically.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was like something that was not default.
Yeah, it may or may not be. It's actually.
There we go. But I don't see any of these.
There's another screen for keyboard mapping, and maybe that's different too. Yeah. Just lost something.
Pull everything you are raising.
Yeah, so if you drag on the hierarchy tag, it kind of drag it.
Kind of
Yeah, it's able to flow. So if you drag it out again. There you go. So make it so it docks to the side.
How do I change?
So expand lighting custody. There's a arrow. Click on the arrow. And then hit out. Or you can double click on it. Well, so when you first put an object out into the scene, it'll see what it's colliding with and try to put it in a good spot. Once it's in the scene, it doesn't do that. There might be some snap settings that you can turn on.
So I would try to snap it on like at the very
Yeah, or you can just move it down. Like,
Hey.
I
Got you decked out. It's like
Right. So the best way to do that would be to create an empty game object in here, and then parent or like make everything a child of that game object, and then rotate it. At least that's off the top of my head what I would do. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. So I would create an empty game object, put it in the center, parent everything to that.
oh, snapped off.
So it wouldn't open in 5.3, so I had to download 5.4 when I did it.
I don't know why I didn't start off. I think I'm one other person. I don't know it started off without a camera.
No, it's
Yeah.
Boxer,
thank you.
dog, that's
So if you do like two button click on like we do two fingers. So that's like a right click on it. Or I think or you can also I think it was function. I think that was maybe it's something. Okay, are we all pretty much had our chance to play with the scene?
no.
So we're gonna move on to step 3. Now after you did all that wonderful work with your scene, we're gonna scrap it. We're gonna start off with a scene that we have prepared, and the scene's directly called starting scene. And when you open that up, you'll see this little set of islands and bridges. This is going to be the platform for our game. And you'll notice when you first load it up, it looks dark, and then after a few seconds, it should lighten up. What's happening there is Unity is baking the lighting information automatically while you're using the scene. I'll show you later on if we get to it, or you'll see it in the slides. There's a way to turn that auto baking off. You can actually explicitly bake the lighting for the scene. We'll get to that later though. So the next thing I'm going to do is add my Viking to the scene. He lives in the models directory under mini Viking. We have 3 different versions of him. There's Viking, Viking Axes, and Viking Sword. We could use any one of these. I'm just going to use Viking Axes because I think axes are way cooler. Plus he's got 2 of them. The Viking Sword, he only has 1 sword. And that's just lame. So now we have the Viking model in the scene. And we can see over in the inspector panel the various components and properties that this model has. Right now, it's got a transform that comes with every game object in Unity, and an animator, but you see this controller property is empty. And then we've got no scripts and nothing else on him. So when I play this game, he's just going to stand there and not be a very good Viking. So we want to add some interaction with him, some controls for him, and that's what we're going to do now. First thing I want to do is add a capsule collider. Colliders in Unity allow you to, as their name implies, collide with things, other things that have colliders. And to do that, I'll click on this Add Component. Okay, so first of all, with the Viking highlighted, I'll click on Add Component, go to Physics, and then Capsule Collider. It's kind of hard to see on here, but actually I have to move it. So when you add this capsule collider, it actually adds it down kind of by its feet. So first thing you need to do is move the center up, so move it up along the y-axis. You can kind of see this little gizmo there. Kind of hard to see on this screen, it's very thin. For some reason mine doesn't show up well, I think it shows up well in yours. And then we want to increase the height so that it fits generally around the size of the Viking. So now it kind of goes up from his head down to his feet. A collider's not going to do much without a rigid body though. So the next component I add is under Physics again, and it's rigid body. This gives us some interaction with the physics system in Unity. So gravity, any ray tracing, those kind of things. Yeah. But if I play my scene, it still doesn't move. So we need some way to control this Viking. So in the scripts directory, I have a script called Player Full Control. I can drag that directly from my project window into the inspector window, and it adds it to that Viking. If we take a look at this script, we won't spend too much time looking at code because it doesn't really help when you're doing a presentation like this, but I do want you to see how some of this was set up. So we can see that we have these serialized fields. You have two floats and this layer mask. They have names and default properties. If we look at Unity, we'll see that those same properties are the ones that are exposed in the inspector. So what this allows us to do is maintain good programming practices. So generally you want things to be private that don't need to be exposed to other classes. So, but we still in Unity want to be able to edit them in the inspector so that we can update those values while we're testing it in the editor or while we're iterating on our designs. Serialized field is a property that allows us to do that, to keep a private variable but expose it in the editor. So we've got a movement speed that's going to tell us how fast to move. Turn speed will tell us how fast to turn. Jump force is going to use the physics system to add a force to the character to pop him up when he jumps. And this layer mask, what is ground, which we'll get to shortly. An important part of programming in Unity is the script lifecycle. Update is a method that gets called on every Unity object once per frame. And it's important to know that because that's where a lot of your logic is going to live. For instance, in this case, we're checking for when the jump button is pressed. And in Unity's input system, that defaults to the spacebar. And this grounded value, which we'll see shortly. So when if the player's on the ground and if the character's on the ground and the player presses jump, we're going to add this force to the character and make him jump. Fixed update is another one of these methods that's part of the script lifecycle. Except instead of being called once per frame, it's called on a fixed time step. So by default in Unity, that would be 0.02 seconds this method runs. So you don't want to put too much logic in there because it's going to run a lot more typically than your update loop. But this is where you definitely want to do all of your physics calculations because you don't want those kind of things to be defined by your frame rate. You want it to be on a fixed time step. So like it's a delta time instead of however long it takes you frame to run. So in here, we're gonna the main thing to pay attention to here is this is where we actually move the character. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're actually moving the character. We're updating its position, moving it. So that's the important thing to know there. Now when I hit play, I can finally move the character around. He looks pretty stiff, right? We'll take care of that later. Don't worry about that. Just make sure you can move around. And... Why can't I jump? No, I'll figure that out in a second. Oh, that's why. Forgot the last step. So the important part of this full player control script, and I pointed it out when I was talking about the code, but didn't actually go back and show you, is what is ground value. This is how we determine if the player is on the ground. I want to make sure I set this to ground in this project. And all ground is a layer that we set up in Unity. Layers in Unity kind of work like layers in Photoshop, in that you can have different objects in it, but it's not like layered on top of each other in that way. It's just that everything that I want to be to consider the ground, I would put in the ground layer. You can create other layers for the player, for projectiles, for whatever we have in the scene. I want to make sure. I want to make sure that I set that to ground. Now when I run around,
Community should be free.
Yeah, it is free. I'm not sure
I'm still not jumping.
Make an email? I already have a Microsoft plugin. It's the same one I used for 2013. 2013 doesn't run these anymore, right?
I'm not sure. It's happened to me with common before.
I've been running into that problem. Do you know of anyone else who I guess I can look forums or ask my friends.
So I had my capsule collider too high, so apparently it wasn't seeing that I was connected to, or I was standing on the ground. Now I can move around and jump properly. So
Awesome.
if you see your character not jumping when you try this, make sure that ground is selected in the full player control, or player full control script, and make sure your collider isn't too high. Oh, something else to point out, you see the Viking just fell over. You might see that at this point. That's because physics, gravity is pulling him down, and he has a capsule collider, which is round on the bottom. We'll take care of that in the next step, so don't worry. Viking's gonna be okay. Alright, so now your turn. So open the starting scene, drag the Viking model into it, add a capsule collider, add a rigid body, add that player full control script, and make sure you set ground, the ground layer as the what is ground property in that script.
Hello.
That's a full screen. But yeah, if you don't know what you did.
Hello.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, so otherwise,
Blah blah blah. Send your shit back.
you can see the
Some of us like just on my
yeah.
Snap.
Oh, you're scared.
Check out this sick news, dog. That's awesome.
You guys just look on the script.
Just jump force and like propel them on full
Whenever I have to just jump off.
Oh snap! That's awesome. That's fun. Hey man, did you?
What was that?
Hey man, did you? Hang on.
What do you mean?
Yeah, hold up. Did you order a Viking and then he'll fall down eventually? Yeah, there you go. Oh.
I can do something really quickly to get you.
Anyways.
When it's all done. So you would hit the translation tool or W?
Oh.
Yeah. I guess I did that.
I was like kind of confused. When I use the arrows, you just go on.
Space bar. So, did you set the player full control? You set that to ground. Okay.
Also, when you set it to ground, how does it know which ground is ground?
Oh, I should show that. So if you click on the it's in the layer ground.
Oh, so you can set different things to like the layer.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna explain.
I have a question.
Yeah, try that. Or raise it up.
Keep rotating. Did you get yours to work? What do you mean? Is yours working? Somewhat. I can't tell.
Oh, that's good. That's the one of us. Because you have the tops and the wires and you have to do this. So essentially when you forward, it's essentially a rock back. Huh? No, that's it for now. We're done.
Why is it?
Oh, when you started, he jumps.
Well, I had
Yeah. It's not I think we did.
American.
That is right now your ball is too small, so you want to make it wide, like your height. You want to make your height like that's your radius. You want to keep it at. So you change your height. I would.
Oh, it stays now. Just kidding.
That should be fun. Like, if you play.
Put it up by like.
How do I get to launch the arrow?
Yeah.
That's probably because like what causes it to launch is because that thing has a collider as well. So it's, when you start, it's like you have two things that should be stuck in each other. It causes force. Here, I think one way you can do so you can make that slightly more with Y type right now. The point is Without a yeah, no one here. Okay, that's you want to turn the collider on, but I would recommend not having it off because it seems like that's a spawn point, and it probably has collider boost. I probably think it's. I would use that. But yeah, like I said, you're inside a collider.
How do I fix the job? So,
The reason you should jump in, like,
just like at the bottom.
yeah, you have it. So, if you do ground, another thing is that any change you do on movie cannot shoot. That probably is insensitive. This platform is not have like a tag or a layer. If you click on this, yep, be there around. So, no. If you press play, can't well, here's there's one way you can be walking. Well, when you were there, you could have paused, you could have gone to C, and then just like yep, and then like see if it is. Okay, so it's touching. Oh my god, it only mounts red. It falls.
Yes, yeah, we can work together. Because so far,
Yeah, but the turn radius and all that, this is force speed. You can ask for it. I don't know.
So these are all different components. Like, yeah, it's a collider. Like how physics interactions.
okay, well, we have someone here from. Is Jotun here?
I don't know who that is.
Oh my god, you're pushing me down. I'm gonna collapse.
Oh wait, mine just fell over here.
Does he need to make
Yeah.
I don't think he needs to make it right now. Yes, I actually just collapsed.
Oh yeah.
Look at that. One right now.
Oh. What? It's control. Why?
Like, you know how 6 seconds get to the left and I go to the left?
You should change your camera to pointing up. Do like a high.
So something can happen.
Maybe try to make the glider a little bit taller. Work a little bit shorter.
So the thing is,
Tell me like a sweet spot like glider needs to be. I had no idea that before.
I have a question. It's not story related. So what is this? Oh. I wanted to ask you, first off, I need to change this back to Visual Studio 2017.
Okay.
How do I do that?
Go to File, or sorry, Windows, edit Preferences. Sorry, go to Edit. I was just saying we're on Windows. Preferences, there, and External Tools.
So this thing, I run into this issue, and I have the same exact issue on my Mac. So which is
It takes a while to.
which is this. Community should be free for everyone, right?
Glider is just gonna go through everything. So
Like community should be free for
So
everyone.
instead of
is what I understand.
So right now, with the caption
I think so. I'm not positive. You might need an account. I don't know.
I mean, I have an account, but it's just like
and the
it's the
problem is
same
that the caption
thing.
glider just now
Yeah.
was like through the floor. So it's
You know, who I need to ask about this? Just like
You can email me afterwards.
yeah, sure. Okay.
I'm just gonna
Started anything, whatever was required. Whenever I played it, there was
So focusing on the character. So the trouble is it doesn't say in the slides, but we need to update the collider. So make the height 2. And the Y, make that like 0.1.
Oh yeah.
That should look better. Try to display now.
So what did you change it to?
Basically the collider was too low, so it was below the surface of the ground, and so it didn't know that it was on top.
Okay, so now it should run, right?
Yeah. Should be able to run around.
Yeah, he's having some
I'm
glider.
trying to jump on.
So, exit play mode. Make the height up 2, just right there, and the Y, look at about 1.
So this is just.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Oh, you've got two scripts there. Usually move one. So you click this loop here.
That's really important. That would be it.
alright.
This is a very dangerous hiking town.
Yeah, sure. You need a screen or anything, or you just?
It's not.
Okay.
Sorry.
So guys, we have a guest from the VR Scout. He's just going to make a short, quick 2-minute announcement about something VR Scout's up to, and then we'll continue the lesson.
Hey you guys, my name is Dale Henry. I'm actually a Rossier grad from 2013, Doctor of Education, but I'm actually here as a contributing writer from VR Scout. VR Scout thinks so much of the program here at SC for what you guys are doing in VR that they want like a dedicated person to kind of check out the projects that are coming out of here. So I'm going to leave some business cards out here on the table, and if any of you guys are, if you're working on some, some interesting projects or something that you think would kind of captivate the imaginations of virtual reality readers, definitely get in contact with me through email or hit me up on Twitter or what have you, and I'll get in touch with you and see if I can get you some coverage through VR Scout. It's one of the top virtual reality sites that's out right now. So that's about it. Thanks for taking the time. I'll leave some cards out here on the table if you guys want to get in touch. Thank you very much.
Alright, so we're gonna move on in the workshop. I'll point out a couple of things I saw as I was walking around. I see a lot of people ran into the same thing I did where the Viking wasn't jumping. So I think what we want to make sure, like if we have the capsule collider height set to about 2 and the center set to about 1, I think that should be a good setting for everyone. So just make sure that's the case. Capsule collider on the Viking 2, center of Y being 1. The other thing, I got a question about why we set this to ground and how we know that this is the ground. So this ground model here, it's actually set to layer ground, as you can see up here. So this is a property that we can set on objects in Unity. So I know that that particular object is on the ground, and I can check against that with my scripts to know that I'm on the ground. All right.
Trying to put me in a very difficult situation. Put me in a difficult situation.
Notes.
I have to delicately move my backpack. Oh.
Alright, so we're going to set up some world boundaries for our game, so our character doesn't move outside of it. So the first thing we're going to do, actually before we put the world boundaries in, I mentioned we're going to take care of this Viking falling over issue. So we can do that in our rigid body component that's on the Viking. If I expand these constraints, I can check freeze rotation X, Y, and Z. Now this doesn't mean that the character's not going to be able to rotate at all. What this means is because this is part of the rigid body, physics isn't going to be able to rotate this guy. So gravity was kind of pulling him over. Gravity's not going to be able to change the rotation and pull him over anymore. So that's going to be the first step here, just to take care of that. Now we want to add the world colliders. So the world colliders are in my prefabs directory. It's this world colliders object here. So I can bring that into my scene. I already have some things set up here. There we go. So when I bring that into my scene, we'll see that this kind of fits the dimensions of this object. And these components have, or these game objects have colliders on them, so the player's not going to be able to go through them. Problem is, they also show up in our game. So we don't want these to show up in the scene or the game view. So let's take care of that. So to remove them from being seen in the scene view, if I go up to my layers menu up here again, there's these little eye icons next to all the layers. I'm just going to check that and turn it off. So those objects are still there, but they're not being rendered in the scene view. But they're still in the game view. So we need to take care of that. And we do that on the camera. So I'll click on my main camera. I have this culling mask property here. I'm going to change that from everything. I'm going to uncheck the wall collider layer. So this is another way we use layers in Unity. So now the camera is not going to render anything on that layer, which right now is just the wall colliders. You can see that if I select the wall colliders here, they're in the layer called wall collider, and so that's how the camera knows not to render that particular object. It culls it out. Now, when I play the game, you'll see that my Viking won't fall over, and he also won't run off the edge, which he could do before. If I actually go in and I turn the wall colliders off, I can see that I can actually run off the edge. All I did there was uncheck this little checkbox in Unity, and that just deactivates the object. All right, so now I'm going to let you do all of that. So the first step is to freeze the X, Y, and Z constraints in that rigid body component on the Viking. Drag the world colliders into the hierarchy window. Yeah, well, not onto another object, but into a blank space in the hierarchy window. Because if you drag it onto another object, it's going to make it a child of that object. And we don't really want that. We want this to be at the top level. Also, don't just drag it into the scene, because then you can move it around wherever you want. It's set up to specifically be in the right location by default. And then in the layers button drop down, uncheck that eye or unclick that eye icon. And on the camera, uncheck the wall colliders layer in the culling mask. And then go ahead and play and try to jump off the edge.
Yeah, sorry, where was the eye?
It's in the layers.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, so that drop down.
Is that new to 5.4?
No, that's been in there for I think as long as I've been using Unity.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's one of those things you can get away without using it, but it makes a lot of things easier.
I think I remember doing this once, and then I forgot. I haven't had to do it because I've been using like box colliders, like just creating an empty game object and having layers there.
Yeah. There's like in gaming, in making games, there's a million ways to do everything.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem.
What if I don't like what happens? Try it.
Okay.
Okay, so it does. Alright, that makes sense. Neat. Wheel. Oh.
Oh, okay. Uncheck its kinematic. What that does is collision, and it'll just trigger like an event. It'll trigger the collider event, but it won't stop the object. So try it now. Yeah. Okay. So making it get the radius. Do that on? I'll put it back up. Yeah.
I knew they probably have it on these computers in the shop, so I just someone said no, it's really which part I think I know, but I just I also just I know just look at this stuff. Oh my god. Best way to play. Oh, yeah.
Wondering because I know when Tucci told me the story about
I was like, like they would like tell me about it, they'd be like, you want to try and have like that
Hey, did you ask for a Viking? Wait, did you not see that?
Go for it again.
Oh man, dude, I had it set up well timed. Now it won't work. I had this guy do that, and then like when he was up in the air, I'm like, hey, did you ask for a?
Oh, I get it because he makes a great.
And it's like comes down.
Oh.
Damn it, man! You just ruined the timing for it. It's just Wait, damn. Okay. Let me try once more.
Oh.
See? Oh, damn it! Damn it! Okay, look away for a sec. Oh no!
Okay. To fix it. I wanted to catch it.
Alright, hey, did you ask for a Viking? I forgot that it doesn't save the changes you make into any of the any of the variables in the interval. So yeah, that was embarrassing. Yeah, it was really supposed to release that first time. Thanks for humoring me. Dude, I'm gonna make this 55 and see how. It's gonna be like solid while.
Is it just like up and down or?
Yeah, it's what it does is that it causes what it's not vector movement, which means that it's not fixed movement. What they're doing is like adding to the velocity, which in this case is the directional movement of it. So I would assume the jump force, because they named it jump force, it adds to like it's the force that under the character that pushes them upward. So I'm not entirely sure how that looks, but I mean that's basically like an impulse. So then if it's an impulse, then that means it's like you add something to like whatever upward direction in your Y, which will essentially push you. Nice. So yeah, that's why. It was even funner when I did physics for like, son of a gun. Ow. Yeah.
It's like landing.
Go home. Drunk. What major are you?
I'm a biomedical engineer.
Nice. Games major. I know how to work with the editor. I'm not a fan of scripting, but I can. Well, I mean coding, but I can script because I've learned to code. Scripting is like an easy peasy version of coding. Like legitimately though. It's much
For us, we only learn MATLAB.
All right.
Yep. It's not any coding languages that the yeah, MATLAB
next
uses its
step,
own.
we're gonna enable VR.
Separate.
We're going to set up some components that will do this for us. Now, in this demo, we don't actually have to have any VR headsets connected, but if you do the last step here, I'll show you what you do with switching between those. We're going to simulate a headset with the mouse, just as we move the mouse around. It's like as if we were turning our heads. Okay. So the first step is it's a little bit of a hacky one. I want to have a rig that I'm going to have be the parent of my camera so that I can move the camera around according to that rig. but I want it to be in the same position as the camera. So I'm going to right-click on main camera and create an empty object. And all that does is it creates this object in the same place as its parent, which is all I want. So I'm going to name this camera control rig, and then I'm going to unparent it from my main camera. And then drag the main camera onto it. So all that little trick did was make sure that I have an object in the same place as the object I ultimately want to be the child of that object. So now if I look at these two in the scene view, they're in the same place. And then on this camera control rig, I want to make sure I also remove any rotation from it. So in the game view, I can see that my camera is kind of pointing down. Well, in VR, we want our default view to be straight ahead, and the only offset we want in our view is to be how we move our head. If I leave it like this, when I put my headset on, I'll be looking straight, but in the game, I'll be looking down, and it's just going to be confusing. So I'm going to remove this rotation, and now I'm looking straight. Okay. The next thing is we need to add a script to this camera control rig to control how it moves. So in my scripts folder, I have camera editor control. I'm going to drag that on to my camera control rig object. And all this does, if I take a look at this script, I have a value that says, am I controlling it with the mouse or not? And then some logic in the update loop to move it around according to my mouse. And I can change that here. If I uncheck mouse control, then I won't be able to use it with my mouse. So here you can see I'm moving my mouse around, and the camera's moving. If I uncheck mouse control, I can't move it anymore. And so that's how we're going to simulate VR here. If I had a VR headset connected, all I'd have to do is go to Edit, Project Settings, Player, and these are all settings for the player for whatever platform I'm using. In this case, it would be Mac OS X. And we have this little checkbox here for virtual reality supported. And with one touch of my finger, VR is working. Depending on the headset you use, you might need to install an SDK, but Oculus is included. So if I had an Oculus Rift connected to a PC, that would work. They won't work on Mac. Oculus hasn't released an updated SDK for Mac, so that only works on Windows. If I do OpenVR, that would work with the HTC Vive connected to the editor. You might need special ones for like Daydream and some other platforms. I actually haven't tried it with Daydream yet. But yeah, so at least for Oculus and Rift, for Oculus and the Vive right now, how many times have I done that? They're integrated natively, and we're working on getting all of the VR platforms integrated natively. Okay, so I don't have a headset, I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm just going to use my mouse control. And that's it for that step. So do that little trick that I did with the empty game object, create it on the main camera, and then pull it off of the main camera and put the main camera on it. Remove any rotation from that camera control rig that we just created, and then add the camera editor control script to the main camera, and make sure that I added it to the camera control rig. I think that's fine too. We'll find out. And check mouse control because we don't have our VR headsets set up. But when you're done with this, you could probably go take it to that computer over there and check it out. You'd have to build it for Windows though, just so you know.
So, thing you got
So if you go to settings,
you got
fire settings.
so you go down to player, drag it down. And now it's not. So, but before you do that, mouse zero out. You do it while it's
So, with the body,
so once that's done, position this way, just roll over. Like now you can like parent. No, not the camera. So now that that's moving, that you could have the rig like essentially not offset. Oh, and the mouse is ready to check, so
माउस कंट्रोल का हटाना तो ऊपर डालना पड़ेगा
so this is where you do your work. You can set your own. You can set your own camera.
that's
This thing actually record that. So you can create your own cinematic scene.
Oh, yeah.
in this
Are you talking about like doing it in VR?
I mean, you could do that.
Like someone like doing that?
Time now, but like the technology exists, right?
Yeah, you do kind of want like
It's just like it's just
They've actually started doing that.
look around.
I haven't been to DRL.
I remember one of the demos was virtual reality.
I
Last year.
is there like a puppet show type thing?
I would change the
I
camera.
don't think it's portrait like you like your ad itself. I think it's partially also VR too.
Do you like it to work with?
Or did you get the chance to choose between like a monster or your skin? Okay, because like I think I played something that's like that. So I know.
It does sound familiar because I remember one it just was.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and then you record it, and it's like, oh, you
Yeah,
see
so you put
you
that
see
here.
your
A couple settings.
Something like that.
it may not be a company, but so far I only know of one company that's used that, and it's
Innovation that we
I forget. But I know that
I know the names are like I think the names are
And I feel like the visuals are very similar to
And anytime you make a change, it just works out. Updates the body. Things that you did in Unity. So best practice is generally to piece by piece. So you have some separate, and then you can place them in Unity however you want. And actually, if they were exported from Maya, like say like this is the center, even if you just exported that project, when you bring it into Unity, it's going to be
separate about the app. Really? Like I haven't downloaded it.
So when you export from Maya, you generally recommend that. That's why format because that's what Unity uses internally. And with that Unity animation, you texture.
I still feel like LA is ahead of like
Yeah, and if you
everywhere
have
else.
you can actually just drop it
I feel like all the
into
technology
file.
is springing out of the big cities like San Francisco, LA, New York, and then
It's a little trickier to work that way,
I
but
like going ahead.
and then as you make
So I
changes
still
to
feel
the
like
objects in Master Maya,
everywhere but
it
LA
updates
still
by
I just feel
You bet. Dude, what is that? Yeah.
said
like,
you're getting master
like,
once.
which, like, yeah, that's awesome.
But essentially,
Time, it just means different.
it seems like all of it's just like a
Yeah, because it says like physics based innovation, like physics. Like,
yeah.
how did you meet him? How many do you work with?
Developers conference. I was like a bar with a friend, very small. He was like a quarter, and I'm like, okay man, what's up? Like, sure. And I remember not saying like, yeah. And then he actually was. He said he wasn't finished yet, but he gave a review, and that review was. And it was essentially like you gotta like I think it's like a funny picture that you're gonna see on there, and then there's like a timer that's like how long you stay on there. Forget about how this is I don't cover out. Yeah,
I mean, like just looking at his
actually, honestly, the physics animation that he's talking about is probably that he has a rig in the character. And then it's just like when he has like a, he's like tapping, it's just like force of light. It's like kind of light.
It's still like
right now, it's like it's probably having like force of light.
I can't really think of where you obtained that.
I'm not sure.
It's
like
No, it definitely needs to have a rig, otherwise it's not gonna.
I would imagine. It seems like it's something that all the
So it has a rig. It's like, and there's probably just physics applied to it. Like, I'm not sure where, but like, I don't know how complicated it is.
survey sites that you go on that like makes sense.
I guess you can actually map pyramids to keys and just map the certain it's just a question. And that guy is probably like a sticky factor. Like how it's very like has to like get past that run to get back to the like he probably weighs like unit numbers like he probably weighs like 500.
sounds stupid, but
Yeah, I played it too. It was pretty fun. I was throwing around, so I was kind of feeling good.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna stay with them though.
Yeah, you probably active mode.
And it's just
It's probably just literally like you gotta move and then like you gotta like move around. I'm not sure if the hands, maybe the hands are just bound to like some sort of I guess. Like he jumps and then it's just like.
All right. I think everyone's caught up.
I didn't expect to get this one.
We're going to move on to the next step. We're going to start animating the character.
I don't sleep.
really.
Yeah.
All right.
And I've been here 2 weeks.
There's just always something.
Now look at my character here. And again, there's one step we're going to do that has to do with the camera before we get to that. On this camera control rig, we're going to add this script, camera follow. And all this script is going to do is tell the rig to follow the character. But I need to tell this script what that target is, what that character is. So from the hierarchy window, I'm going to drag Viking axes over to this target. And now this script is going to know what that target is so that I can get the offset, and then in the fixed update loop, I can follow that character. It calls this vector3.lerp, so basically that's a linear interpolation so that the camera will smoothly follow that character. So it smoothly accelerates, smoothly decelerates, and you'll see that as we try it out. If I do it right now, you can see that it moves pretty quickly and follows the character. If we were looking at this in VR, you might be getting sick right now because it's moving way too quickly. So we want to turn the speed down on the camera follow script to 1. And then when I play it, it's going to slowly follow him. As I move or stop moving, it slowly slows down to match him. And that's going to be a little more comfortable in VR. One thing I might have glanced over in the previous step, because we're simulating the VR headset, I got a question: how do I see the character? Or are there sensors or something that's going to follow the character? basically this camera follow script and the headset that we're wearing is going to allow us to look wherever we want. So we can choose to look completely away from the character if we want to. That's the freedom that VR is giving us. And it's going to be helpful in this particular game, as you'll see later on when we put collectibles other places in the scene. So now we have the camera following the character. Let's start animating the character. If I go into my models directory where I originally found that Viking, mini Viking, there's this little arrow next to the model in the folder here. If I click on that, it expands out to a whole bunch of things. These are all the different components that make up this model. So I can see I have the Viking. We have a little preview window over here for when you're highlighting things. You can see what it looks like. I have an axe, some other things in here. But then you see all these icons that have this little play icon on it. These are actually animations that were imported with this model. If I look at this model in the Finder here, I can see that it's called Viking Axis FBX. Now FBX is it means film box. It's a format for exchanging graphical information. Basically with this you get a model, so the Viking model, you get all its vertices, it'll have all of its textures with it, all the materials, and all the animations with it. This is generally the workflow we use to go from something like 3ds Max and Maya. We export to an FBX file. That way we get those textures and materials, those animations that we've used a tool that was designed to do that. And we can bring all of those in Unity and use them. And I'll show you how you do that. So I was pointing out these icons with the play buttons on them. These are the animations that were imported with that FBX. I just want to use a few of them. I want to use idle. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag idle onto my Viking character. And it doesn't really look like much happened, right? But if I go check out my Viking, I see that this animator now has Viking axes in the controller, whereas before it didn't. Sorry, I didn't show that, but if I double click on that, it opens up the animator window. So Unity uses a system called Mechanim. It's an animation state machine. So I'm going to be able to put different animations into this and define how we transition to those different animations. And that's what I'll show you here. So I dragged that idle animation onto my Viking axes. Next I'm going to drag jump into the animator. You could also drag it onto the Viking axis object over here again. But with this window open, I don't need to. And also I'll drag run in here. I'm going to organize these a little bit logically. It doesn't really matter where they are in here, but looking at them, it makes more sense to jump is higher and run is forward, and it just kind of makes more sense to me. That's all we're going to do for this step, and we're going to define some of the transitions and start making him do these animations in the next step. But I can show you right now, when I play the game, you can see he's kind of like doing this kind of thing, getting ready for a fight. And that's just the idle animation. If I look at the animator screen, I can see that this idle animation is just playing on a loop. He's not going to be able to jump or run because I don't have any transitions defined yet. But he will just keep idling, keep psyching himself up. All right. All right. So add the camera follow script to that camera control rig and set the speed to 1. Then drag the idle, run, and jump animations onto the Viking. Or after you do one, open up the animator window and drag them in there. And then just make sure you have that animator window open to take a look at it. That's what we're going to use in the next step. No, it doesn't.
I still have the Walsh. I just haven't done anything, but I guess.
Okay, so we're not doing that.
What?
I think it's that. I didn't do that. I don't think that it matters, but you don't want to have conflict. That's the difference. Yeah, so if you uncheck it, disabled it, and then you should be able to.
Just don't know where this is going. What? Okay, so here's where my camera is.
Now it does.
Now I play do that.
Okay.
And the wall design.
Okay.
Where's this?
Liking को drag and drop it. Liking को करना है. Screen को on.
Click on that arrow.
Animation. Animation.
That's so you can see what the camera sees.
Got it. So I just added a camera accidentally to the wall. Layer.
I'm so sorry I had to take the movement script off of my mushroom. Okay. Drag control again.
Just a little arrow.
Oh, okay.
No, I can't. I can't. Window.
Somehow, create a camera so that you game out of it.
Just like turn them on.
Yes. When you go to camera, if you go to make camera, I didn't do that. I mean, camera follow on the camera works as well. Just like do that.
Also, make sure you don't know what the controls are. Oh. Like
So it'll
But it's immediately close to the line.
Okay, yeah.
what is this?
You did. Yeah, so right now, because you have the script highlighted,
It's like making him jump back to but not the other one.
Yeah, but not even like animation.
not that, yes. So now we're talking about
Who created that?
Same thing.
Yeah, at least that was.
I know it's not but I have to put on. I was wondering if setting up the transitions.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
just fading.
from idle to jump, so we'll end up creating parameters. And I'll make sure that I get the slides to Johnson so that she can send it out to everyone.
Okay, I can, and I'm gonna, and I know someone else. Okay, that's so, not having parameters is the whole reason this is happening right now.
Yeah, and I'll explain that in the next one, but it's because it's based on the length of the animation. So when the animation ends, it goes to the next state, which isn't what we're gonna end up running. Yep. permanently window animation. Yeah, we can figure it out. So all you did was that you dragged the jump animation first, so that it's the default state. So you can right click on idle. Makes default. So now it's going to by default start and we'll create those. Yeah, we'll create that.
Still next time.
Animator window? So there's two ways. You can go to window and animator, or you can go to
Marketing.
or you could also
I want my camera.
Second year?
oh, then you're already on. I don't know how that's set up properly.
Yeah, that was
The camera's moving.
very close. I'm not sure if I did this exactly, but only one of them is orange.
That's not true. Yeah, the orange state indicates as a default state, and that's the one that it goes into initially, and then we'll create the
I
transition.
think I have a mouse control.
Oh, yeah.
I know the
No,
Unreal
yeah.
Engine upload editor.
That's why he was just standing there doing this the whole
One
time.
more question. When I drag the animation, I drag it onto the
On the bike, yeah.
like if you click the mouse a little, oh yeah.
Oh, that. Okay, that's
Everyone ready to move on to the next thing? Any other questions?
It's not
Good?
VR.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So now we're going to start making the transitions between these animations.
I know.
So this is going to be a little bit more of an involved step, but they'll all be up here on the slides. So in our animator window, we have these three different states, right? And if we right click on one, we can say make transition, and we go to the other states. So I want a transition from idle to jump, from idle to run, and then back to idle on each of those. And then from from run to jump, and from jump back to run. Now we have this little animation state machine with transitions here. The problem is that all of these transitions have this exit time checked by default. We don't have a logical condition to say when should I move from one state to the other. So what's going to happen when I play is that he just he's in the idle animation and then he does the jump animation, and that's all he does. And that's because if we look at our animator, we can see that the idle animation plays through. When it reaches the end, we follow this transition to jump. When the jump animation reaches the end, we follow the transition back to idle. And we just keep doing that in a loop. So we want to add some logical conditions for these transitions. Let's see. So for each of these transitions, I want to go in and uncheck exit time. For all 6 of these. Now if I were to play, I would again just stay in idle because we have no way to transition. So I want to create conditions for these transitions. We do that with our parameters. There's this tab over here on the left that says parameters. If I hit this plus button, I want to create a float called speed. I want to create a bool called grounded. And I want to create a trigger called jump. Now speed it's a float, it's just a numerical value. Grounded is a bool, it's true or false. Jump is a trigger, which doesn't really have a state. It's something that, as the name implies, triggers, and then we can make that a condition for a transition. So I want the transition from idle to run. I have this conditions list here. Let me zoom in there. In my inspector panel. I want to create a new condition. So when do I want to move from the idle animation to the run animation? Well, it's when I'm moving. So when speed is greater than 0.01. It could be lower than that, could be higher than that, but this value just works for this animation. When do I want to transition back to idle? I want to do that when speed is less than 0.01. And now if I go into my game, I can move my character around, and as I'm running, he plays the run animation, and when I stop, he does the idle animation. Now it's important to note that this animation isn't what's actually moving the character. We already saw that we can move the character without any animations. What we're doing with the animations is kind of animating the rest of the character, so it looks like he's running, so it looks like he's just standing there getting ready for a fight. These animations won't make the character move throughout the world. Alright, so that is going to be all for that step. In the next step, we'll handle the jump transitions. For this, we're just going to handle the transitions between idle and run. So you can do this in any order, really. You'll create those three parameters: the speed, that's a float; the trigger, called jump; and the bool, called grounded. And then you can create those transitions between the three different states. This one's pretty simple. You want to transition forward and back between all the states. Uncheck has exit time on all of those transitions. Basically, you just click on the little line that goes between the states. Uncheck has exit time. And then set the transition conditions from idle to run as speed greater than 0.01, and from run back to idle as speed less than 0.01. Right.
Because like if you're grounded, that means you're not interested.
Right. For the logic that we defined for this particular game, from idle to jump, we're just looking for the jump trigger. So you can get rid of the grounded one. So you highlight, click on the little left thing there, it highlights it, and you click minus, get rid of it. So the transition from idle to jump is just one trigger. But for the jump back to idle, it's not going to be down. We're going to move that. We do want grounded. We want under this trigger the transition back to idle, but we also need another condition. So plus when speed is less than 0.01.
What is the jump trigger?
There's a place in the code that I kind of skipped over because we don't have a lot of time. That fires that trigger. There's a line in code that says trigger this jump.
So it's like
Jump trigger.
so it's like a method then?
If you go to the full player control script, it's in there. Oh, okay. You can do it in monodevelop too.
Okay, but it's but like I guess like it's essentially this jump triggers like switch between switching values like
It's not even a boolean. It just fires once and says jump, and then the animator's looking for that.
Oh, okay. So it's just like trigger like. So it is like a function, and then like that function is like rise up and just fire this animation. Or I mean,
So
you fire the animation.
yeah, you fire the animation because there's other logic that controls him moving
Yeah,
up, but the jump animation when he does that. That's that.
Wait, so
Oh, so right.
You'll see it's at the same points of the building.
No, it's just it's one.
it looks good.
Mine just doesn't run. I can only
There's a lot
observe
going
it.
on right now.
Just the back.
Why doesn't it work?
No, that makes any change.
Wow, how old are you? The only reason it wouldn't work with VR stuff
I skipped over the part where I showed the script where it's setting these.
actually it shouldn't matter. You're not even using the VR.
Okay,
It's actually just
it's okay. So you don't want I just find it
grounded and jumping because in our script, there's a call that says set this parameter,
So
and
you shouldn't
it makes us
get me any alcohol.
right now it's using any part.
Yeah, they do. These are Project Hyper art.
Oh, really? It's in
That's hilarious.
Which school is that? Or is it? This is under the.
Go to Erica.
Oh, is it like their story to? Yes. Room 308. And then it's also nicknamed.
So this is
Yeah, like, yep, no, yeah. But,
take care.
Yeah, I like how now.
That's where we work right next to it. You know that they also have a promotion.
oh, wait. There we go.
Yeah, sure.
Any other applications?
Unreal.
So it's basically going to be project to allow people
If you're not
understand living in space by pretty much simulating what's like it's a two-place
That's wrong.
I think this is yeah. Oh yeah.
We're trying to make it seem as intuitive
I
as
like
possible, so rather than
There you go.
So it's like this.
This is IMGD or interactive entertainment, I guess now.
That's your asking.
Yeah, IMGD.
Okay, are we about ready to move on? So we got time for about one more step, and then we'll be probably right around 8:30. I don't want to keep you guys too much later than that. But like I said, I'll post the link for all the slides for you guys. So you can finish this on your own and do it on your own.
She's just a little skeptical, though, about like the older versions because she's seen.
If I'm not wrong, and I don't know if
So we're gonna go back to our animator.
misinformed about this, but as far as
We have our transition states from idle and run. Now we want to handle the jump state. So from idle to jump,
it's an update that
we want our condition to be based on the jump trigger. And note these parameters should all be capitalized. That's because there's a script in this project that handles all this. It's that player full control script. I kind of skipped over that so that we're kind of running out of time. But there are script calls in there that say control the speed or set the speed value, set grounded to true and false, or fire the trigger, the jump trigger. And that's all we're doing. We're setting this up to use those script calls.
Room 308.
So idle to jump is based on the jump trigger. Run to jump is also based on the jump trigger.
It's basically
We want to transition from jump back to idle
basically she's asking
when we're grounded. So when grounded is true. We want to set transition from jump to run also when grounded is true. Now the problem with this, as it is right now, is we have one state that has transitions with the same condition. So we can't transition to two states when we're grounded. We have to one or the other. So we need another condition. And I'll show you that real quick. Play here. My animator window, so you can see that while
it's for basically it's for her project, which is not related to your class. It's for
okay.
a
So if
research project that we developed.
If I jump, when I land, I go to the idle state.
We
But
just
if I
want
jump when I'm running, it goes to the idle state too, and then it goes to the run state. And it kind of looks weird. It's kind of hard to see here, but
what version did
for a second he's like not running, and it looks like he's just floating on the ground. That's because with the same condition, it decided to go to idle first. Maybe because that's the first transition I made. I'm not sure how we prioritize
just
that.
want to know about it.
So I want to add another condition to this list.
As long
And I want that to be when the speed is less than 0.01 to go back to the idle state. So if I'm jumping and I'm not moving forward, then I go back to idle.
And then yeah, I just need
From jump to run, my second condition is speed greater than 0.01. So if I'm moving while I'm jumping and I land, I want to
But we're
transition
not
to run
we're not
state.
much together.
Now when I hit play,
We're still working on that.
I can run and jump, and as I'm moving, I transition to the run state.
It's fine. I mean,
If I jump while I'm in place,
this thing too.
I transition back to the idle state. So that animation state machine is working correctly. All right.
That's fine.
That's all there is to that step.
At least I was able to get.
And when I do that, so set the transition from idle and run to jump, both as a jump trigger, and from jump back to idle as grounded is true and speed less than 0.01, from jump to run as grounded is true and speed greater than 0.01. And the last step in here is something I just didn't show. You can actually adjust how those animations blend between each other. But in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over that. You can look into it on your own.
Sure. Take it. See
So basically, when I fire off that trigger, it's just going
For a weapon, that's still doesn't work.
Like your manipulation, whatever, because it keeps thinking that whatever's underneath you, you can keep jumping.
So if you click on the animator and drag it, dock it anywhere else. When I'm working on projects, I only use animators so that I can have like all that
Like something about the jump that's telling you that you can jump without having to grab there.
then you probably create a ground animation or oh yeah, so you have yeah.
It's weird though, 'cause you can do that before.
You couldn't?
Well, I mean,
You have to get an exit point.
yeah, but I didn't transport it.
It might not let you put the same.
Probably did something else.
Yeah, you have to rename it. Okay.
I don't know. I think I remember. I think I know what I ate. I want to
It's like fine.
Whoa! If you had it's not working, but if you were to add like an action like that, how would you determine what button to? Well, that should determine that.
That's going to be up to your game design. You could make it like a left mouse button click or.
But I mean, like, where exactly would you do that?
Oh, so if you look at the player full control script,
Which is
in your scripts directory, player full, yeah, double click that. This is the part that I skipped over.
oh, okay. So you have to.
So you can see that here we say input.get button down. So the input system in Unity, it has some default buttons set up, and in the editor there's a menu for that. You can see what buttons are mapped to these actions. We call them actions. So there's a jump button by default. It's a space bar. So we check our input system to say, is the space bar down? Yes. Then in our animator set this trigger jump. And that's what triggers that animation jump. So you would just have a different button that triggers a different parameter.
Okay.
Or a different trigger. Yeah.
Cool. Are you, this is after this, right?
What's that? I hope I didn't just mess that up.
No, it looks like it's fine. The power's still charging.
Yeah.
So that's it after this stuff, right?
So there's actually like 12 or 13.
Oh no, I meant like for tonight.
Yeah. I'm gonna end it here. And I'm gonna give everyone the link to the slides.
What are the remaining steps doing?
So we had some game logic, audio, some lighting effects.
So with a lot of like shelves.
Yeah, I mean, because right now all we're doing is moving a character around.
Yeah.
The next steps, we'll actually add like some game logic. So there's collectibles that we put out in the sequence. There's logic to control when the player wins and loses.
That means basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the I just wanted to know because,
Or like the.
I figured out like the animation transitions between the run and based off what you told me, like and trial and error, like you run and jump or jump to run. So if we're done, then I have to turn it up.
Yeah, it'll be easier like once you get all the files. You can like sit down with it yourself. Yeah, I do. Be right there. You'll email me and I'll have it. Depends on where you go.
So we have joystick space. It's right
How do you add that? Okay, so the more you get like that.
Yeah, so there's some animations you can do within Unity. We have another tool here that can define animations for all kinds of objects and properties in Unity. But these would have been created in like 3ds Max or Maya, mainly because like, those tools already existed and we're really good at doing that. So rather than you can just load it right into Unity.
Not unless
Yeah, because Unity will take that model and you'll build it for PC and then it'll run as like a Unity application, which takes care of all that.
But it still has jump force, which is like
3ds Max.
so delete this, so it's just delete the jumps.
Not right now. I mean, everything.
So just before everyone leaves, there's like 6 more steps here, but I'm not going to go through them right now. What I am going to do is give you guys a link.
What is jump?
So
Jump
here, the top link is a survey. It's basically like, how was this workshop? How was I? Which was awesome, right? And then if you fill out that survey, you can enter to win a pass to Unite LA in November this year, or a free 12-month subscription for Unity Pro. So that's kind of cool. And if you want the slides that I used today, they're at this link on the bottom. So I encourage you guys all should be able to get the links to the project. If not, contact me or contact, what's up? Is that her name? Okay. And we'll be able to get that project to you. And then you can go through this whole thing on your own, try the steps that you missed, or that I didn't explain very well, and then get to the end of it. And have a little game that you can demo in VR. Okay, thank you all for coming tonight. This was a lot of fun for me.
Thanks for coming out, guys. Hope to see you next time. And for those of you who haven't become full members,